There's a fascinating report out today about Winston Churchill from some recently discovered letters with his family. Apparently his family begged him to, quote, fight against the desire to convert to Islam. This has to take the record for the most left field story we've ever done. Like, who the fuck ever knew that Winston Churchill was considering converting to Islam? Let me give you some more details on it, because the reality is a little bit more cloudy and a little more nuanced here. His sister-in-law said in 1907 in a letter to him, quote, "Please don't become converted to Islam. I have noticed in your disposition a tendency to Orientalese, Pasha-like tendencies. I really have." So the letter was found by a historian at Cambridge University, Warren Doctor, while he was researching for his book called Winston Churchill in the Islamic World. They say, quote, "The former UK Prime Minister was greatly interested in Islam and Oriental culture, but, quote, never seriously considered converting. He was more or less an atheist by this time anyway. He did, however, have a fascination with Islamic culture, which was very common among Victorians." So Churchill became acquainted with Islamic culture during his army service in Sudan and was greatly taken with it. In fact, this to me is the most interesting fact. Him and his friend even dressed in the standard Islamic dress when they were together on the weekends. Isn't that really fucking interesting? I can't picture Winston Churchill like that, but he was like that. The article says it, so there you have it. Now, at the same time, I should also mention, though, he was critical of their religion. He said the following, quote, "The fact that in Mohammedan law, so Sharia law, every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as a child, a wife, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power among men." So in other words, what he's saying is, yeah, dude, I really like the culture, as is clear, but you can't treat women as property, and that's basically slavery. Like, slavery will never be gone until people stop taking that aspect of it seriously. And again, another area he's right. So interesting, man. It's really fucking fascinating that, you know what it is? It has to do with the Ottoman Empire. Not many people know about the Ottoman Empire, even though it was very recently. The Ottoman Empire was a fascinating thing, and, you know, they had this like really ornate dress at certain times, and supposedly Ottoman culture and Persian culture really influence wealthy people in the West and wealthy people in Britain specifically. I know that we covered the story how high heels were originally something that was viewed as masculine. Now, why is that? Because in Persian society, you would have the soldiers would wear high heels just so that for a practical reason, so that they could lock into their horses as they ride, and when they aimed, they didn't want to bounce all over the place, so the heels would lock them into place as they fired their arrows. And what happened is wealthy men in Britain saw these guys wearing the heels, and they went, I have to wear heels. And the only reason being that they thought the Persians looked like badasses in the heels, and they were like, oh, I have to wear heels. They just look so badass, I need to copy their style. And they did. And then upper class men in Britain wore heels for a long time, and then eventually, obviously, the roles reversed, and now women wear heels and it's viewed as feminine and not masculine, and it's weird how society changes, but very often you had people in the West essentially copying Islamic culture, the Ottoman Empire culture, culture from Persia at the time, modern-day Iran. So it's really, when you look at it all, it's really interesting. And it also leads me to believe that people can't help it, man. When you're young and you're, you know, you're at a time when you can easily be influenced by stuff. And, like, the smallest thing could tilt you in one direction and not another direction. Like a young 20-year-old Winston Churchill being in Sudan, seeing Islamic culture and going, they dress like badasses, I gotta be like these guys. Like, I might want to even convert. Fucking fascinating, man. But look, overall, you gotta give a lot of credit to Winston Churchill, because he seems to have this rational approach overall, where he says, I like Muslims, I like the Islamic culture, and to be clear, the Islamic culture back then rooted in the Ottoman Empire, right? But at the same time, I don't like the flaws. I don't like predominantly treating women like property, and I don't like all the downsides. And to be clear, remember that when Ataturk came along and reformed the Ottoman Empire and basically made it Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire was gotten rid of, and Ataturk rose to power. He was a secular Turkish guy who was responsible for making Turkey a mostly secular nation and changing a lot of the bad aspects of Islamic culture. So that should be noted as well. But either way, man, fascinating story. If you told me at the beginning of today that Winston Churchill had considered becoming a Muslim at some point, or if you asked me, pick the one person ever who's least likely to ever think about converting to Islam, I would have said Winston Churchill. Old, fat, doughy white dude is what pops in your mind. The guy who basically defeated, or one of the key factors in defeating Hitler. The last thing you think is that this guy had a fascination with Islamic culture, but there you have it.